and youth empowerment, a strategic advisor to national and traditional institutions. He blends business leadership with cultural advocacy and policy engagement, shaping impactful and inclusive development models. Ladies and gentlemen, with a resounding applause, help me welcome Dr. Maxwell Ampong, who is the Chief Executive of Maxwell Investment Group, MIG. We can do better as he takes on the podium. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. And it was very refreshing hearing the words of the esteemed Professor Boso. To the Center Director, the Provost of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, the delegates from Learn Logistics, CARISCA Advisory Board members, government officials present, professors and faculty from KNUST, CILT executives, all sponsors and partners, all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen, good morning once again. I'm going to take a page from our esteemed professor's notes and say, let's not be too serious about the subject matter. As much as the subject matter is a serious subject. So I'll start off by saying that I have been asked to speak on fueling Africa's growth through collaboration and partnership via shared resources. It is a comprehensive theme, yes, one that deserves plain, honest treatment. Because in my view, growth that endures does not happen by coincidence. It happens by intent, and it does not wait for permission. It is not imported, and certainly it is not imposed. Growth is assembled. It is engineered, and always, without exception, growth is built together. But let us not mistake that word together as a simple one. No, it sounds lovely. We are doing things together, but it demands more than just goodwill. A true partnership means aligning budgets as well as our timelines, as well as our visions, our pride. It means working with people you didn't choose and solving problems you did not cause. That is not easy. It means walking back into the room even after the meeting went sideways. It means staying when the cameras and the glamour and the flashy things have all left. Too often, we think of the idea of collaboration as cosmetic. We see the ribbon cutting, the matching polo shirts and stickers. It's all nice. The news coverage. But that's not where the real work happens. No. Collaboration it begins when there's tension, not celebration. It begins when timeline slips and the trust between partners are now tested. When something breaks and the first call isn't to align blame, but to offer assistance, but to offer help. In my own work spanning agriculture, logistics, finance and technology, the most durable collaborations that I have ever had didn't emerge from comfort. And I hope if any of my partners here, they don't feel some way about it. It emerged from constraint and from a willingness to push through. The strongest relationships don't form when things are going well. No. The strongest are forged when something goes wrong, but someone shows up, despite something going wrong. Within our Maxwell Investment Group ecosystem, I've seen this firsthand. A few years ago, a partner was facing a cold chain crisis. Imagine importing wet goods, as we call it, from Tema all the way to the north, and it breaks down on the way. When I received the call, I didn't wait for lawyers to draft a contract. I did not ask too many questions, as I usually would. Immediately, we dispatched one of our trucks at our own cost, and we solved it. I incorporate this into my speech because that man has been my partner for over a decade, and he always brings me back to that moment as the reason why he chose a company as his partner. It was inconvenient. It was just action. No fanfare, no pictures, no social media posts. But it saved his shipment and it protected his reputation, and by extension, our reputation as well with him. Shared risk is shared accountability and mutual belief that value is worth protecting even when that value is not yours. So today I want to dig into that. And heads up, this is just the preface of the presentation. So there's going to be more digging in, and I want to dig into subject matters like this, exploring questions like, what does it truly mean to fuel growth through collaboration? What do shared resource mobilization look like outside of textbooks, but on the ground, not in the PowerPoint presentations? And how do we design systems that can scale, and not just events that look good on photos? Actual scalable ideas. So let's dig in openly, rigorously, and as my boss, Professor Aboso, said, not too seriously. I begin with a confronting and essential question. What is our leverage as a people, as a company? Not what we aspire to, but what we are proud of. What we can actually use to shape outcomes in our favor. Again, what is our leverage? In every room that I have ever sat in with partners that are bigger than me, on par with me, smaller than me, it is not size that commands the room. It is not experience that commands the room. It's one thing always commands the room: leverage. If I tell you how many allergies have beaten me in negotiations and made me doubt economic qualifications, it's always leverage that wins. So I'll ask again and plainly, what is Africa's leverage? What is Ghana's leverage? What is our leverage as stakeholders right here, right now? It's true, Africa has great potential. True potential does not negotiate. It leverages. So the question shouldn't be, why aren't we getting more from the table? The real question is, what did we bring to the table that others did not bring? And we can leverage that to get more after we leave the table. Leverage must be built. It must be built intentionally, methodically, and very necessarily stubbornly, because it is very difficult to craft leverage. Leverage begins in infrastructure, not just flashy projects, but working systems, roads that drain properly, ports that clear very quickly, storage that protects rather than wastes. Leverage lives in data, not just for compliance alone. A lot of us rush to clean up data compliance when the Ghana Data Protection Agency started calling every company. I saw a lot of people asking questions about that. They called our offices and all of that. But not just for compliance, but for decision making. That is where your leverage will lie. Leverage lives in data that tells us how long it takes from the tomato to move from, say, Techiman to Tamale. And data that allows risk sharing and not risk dodging. Because after all, risk sharing is the essence of collaboration. Leverage also lives in processing power. Turning raw materials like cassava into shelf-ready flour, raw knowledge into patents, cocoa beans into bars, and not just raw exports. Leverage lives in trust. And I don't mean emotional trust, I mean operational trust. The kind that allows a financier to release funding before sunrise because your systems have earned it. They have earned the trust of the financier to deliver on what they expect you to deliver. And most critically, leverage lives in ownership. You need to own the platforms on which you operate. Ownership of tools, of relationships. If you don't own it, then by extension, you are renting. You are renting your influence. And sooner or later, as everything that you don't own, the rent becomes due. Let me offer one slightly different dimension, one that we really factor into our national strategies, which is relational equity. Within our MIG ecosystem, I know operators, some without formal titles, like the allergies that beat me at negotiations all the time. Without influence as the world will define it, but their word moves things faster than memos in a boardroom. There are aggregators within the northern side of Ghana who don't own warehouses, but their coordination become the keystone in ball grain delivery operations across Ghana. Trucks move because they say so. Farmers trust them because they deliver on their social promise, not just on contracts. Our we the formal sector, our contracts holds because they, them keep their word. His leverage, that's not capital, it's not clout, it's character. And it's not a soft aspect of our discussion here. It's foundational. Because in any ecosystem, people build systems, but it's reputation that keeps them running. If I walk into a shop or a building and I see MTN, the reason my subconscious doesn't say run away is because I trust that yellow brand with MTN in it to deliver on a certain promise that they have given. So what does all of this mean? It means we need to stop obsessing over visibility and start obsessing over value, real, measurable value. We need to bring what others cannot replicate, not just what they already expect. Because real partnerships aren't built on pity. No, they are built on parity. And parity isn't gifted. It's built with what again? With leverage. I want to shift the thought. What if we reimagined collaboration not as a guaranteed outcome, but more like an investment portfolio, like the venture capitals do? So stay here with me now. In venture capitalism, most things fail. You make an investment in 10 firms and you expect 7 of them to fail, 2 of them to break even, give you back your money, and 1 of them to make so much money that it pays for all 10 of them and even the rest. That's not recklessness. They call that portfolio logic. It's risks that are spread across multiple calculated bets, anchored in the belief that big wins don't emerge from perfect conditions, but from calculated attempts. Can we apply that same logic to collaborations? Because not every partnership will work. Not every MOU we've all signed here has panned out. None of them have 100% blossom rate. Some of them amounted to basically nothing. Some joint ventures will fall. Some will stall. Others will collapse under misalignment, ambition, and poor execution. But if just one of them scales enough, if just one of them reinvents logistics efficiency, digitizes aggregation, or proves that rural cold chains can be profitable, then the return on that trust in the collaborations that we sign, in the collaborations that we enter into, become exponential. Take my friend Hack Adamu from Global Haulage Ghana Limited. As a logistics, they're actually a logistics affiliate to Federated Commodities PLC, represented here. He operates one of the biggest logistics fleets in the country, well over 200 trucks. Last time I spoke to him, he had imported about 50-something more trucks. Now has a fleet of almost 300 trucks. When big logistics opportunities come to my desk, you might expect me to grab them and expand my logistics arm. But I often pass them to my friend Hack. Not just because he's my friend, no. There's a formula to that. It's because competition for its own sake is a tax on our ecosystem. If he's better in resource, he's better equipped and better positioned, I would rather collaborate with him than duplicate. And I don't think that's a concession. It is a corporate strategy at Maxwell Investments Group. It is long-term thinking, and it's an understanding that shared growth multiplies outcomes. So to my trade desk, I always say, if you want to go fast, go alone. But you want to go far, go with Hack. And then they will smile. That line never fails to get a smile from my trade team. But beneath it is a very serious thesis. It's that we must stop seeing opportunity as a zero-sum game. The market is not too small. It's just too siloed. So we fail to see the bigger picture. The real constraint is coordination. And this mindset goes even beyond regular business that we do. I want to imagine if the banks also applied this logic. Instead of asking how many accounts did we open this quarter, how much turnover did we maintain in our accounts, what if the banks asked how many businesses did we help across the chasm from MSMEs to SMEs? How many SMEs do we help grow to become, small businesses? How many small businesses do we grow to become large businesses? How many large businesses did we take national or international? Not that they are not doing it now. I'm saying, what if they did it even more? It will change everything. Imagine if development funding followed the same trail as well. Not to those with the glossiest pitch decks, but to those that demonstrate actual traction. The people and the organizations that know the terrain and deliver results without billboards and fancy fanfare are the ones that deserve funding the most. And I'll say CARISCA is a perfect example. CARISCA is a homegrown center of excellence that could easily be underfunded and has been underfunded just as, please, I didn't disclose it, though, you disclosed it. It could have been boxed in. But look at what they've built. Look at what they are doing. Look at the caliber of research, the quality of this convening alone, the level of strategic insight coming from an African soil for Africa's supply chains. Now, that is the kind of bet that will pay off. Your bet will definitely pay off on CARISCA. Because, again, it requires a venture mindset. One that understands that not every initiative will scale, but the ones that do will change the terrain for all of us. It's not always what can I get out of all of this, but what can I help get off the ground so that once it takes off, I am part of that ecosystem. As Africa, one of our key collaborative goals has been to export. And we often talk about export as a destination. Before I even go into export, it just occurred to me that I once called Stephen Jr. from CARISCA. Sorry, Evans. And I asked Evans, so all your research is like open, it's available. He said, yes, it's available. That was a couple months ago. It just surprised me because it shows you how CARISCA is willing to collaborate with the world and with Africa, which usually, even sometimes you call organization for prices, keke. Or price, yeah, you will stay on the call and you will not even get it. Oh, I won't talk. That's what you get. CARISCA is very proactive, and I'm glad to be part of your esteemed ecosystem. On the subject of export, I realized that we speak of export as a destination. In every national development plan that has ever mentioned export, most economic panels that I've been part of, summits, export is that magic switch for industrial transformation. The promise of US dollars is very alluring. The dream of made in Ghana stamped on goods across borders. So it's no surprise that the Honorable Julius Deborah, our distinguished guest of honor, yet to be here, has been very vocal in calling for Ghana to become a West African assembling and export hub, actually even for Africa, particularly through strategic partnerships with global partners and global powerhouses like China. It is a bold and important vision that deserves all the attention, and more importantly, it deserves structure. But export is not where the journey begins. It is where the world has decided you have arrived. Not a single average Joe can stand up and say, I'm exporting. No. When the world decides you have reached the level of exports, that is when you export. So you don't start with export. We have to earn export. I'll rope CARISCA in again because now I'm utilizing a lot of your data, Prof. I will admit to you. To increase the credibility of my earning, we are a free zones company, so we have to export. To increase how my potential to earn. So export is evidence. It's evidence that your internal systems are coherent. It is evidence that your processes are consistent. It is evidence that your goods can cross customs, arrive intact, meet the standards, and still turn a profit. That is why they would call you back and you will export again. It is a signal of institutional reliability. We cannot export if we cannot systemize. That's not possible. We cannot export what we cannot certify. No. You can't deliver something that has not received certification. We cannot also compete if we don't collaborate, because it is now the world is literally a global village. Across borders, yes, but more urgently within our borders, we need to collaborate. So let's take a short pause here and ask ourselves, what does export readiness actually mean? It means traceability in our supply chains, where every input can be validated. It means reliable infrastructure, so containers don't miss. Oh, this happens to me many times. Don't miss their windows because of washed out feeder roads. It means harmonize such standards so our food exports don't get flagged in Europe, or some products like textiles don't miss the AGOA window in the USA. It means digital coordination, so logistics, finance, warehouse, and quality assurance can speak to and draw synergies from one another. And for us, this is very practical. These are not just buzzwords, they are preconditions. They increase systemic trust through predictability, all towards increasing the export readiness of our institutions. And predictability doesn't come from slogans. No, it comes from interoperability. Many segments or sections need to work together for it to work. Export readiness is also about the national brand. What does the world think now when they see made in Ghana or a product of Ghana? Can that label mean on time, certified and investable? Does this still mean it has potential? But we all know Africa, it has caveats. No, it must mean the former. The truth is, countries that succeed in exports embed discipline in every layer of their value chain. An example is South Korea. They didn't just build export capacity. They built standard enforcement agencies that function without politics. Vietnam didn't just open their right fields to the world. Now everybody's importing Vietnam farms. No. Research have showed, research I took from professors' websites has shown that they reformed land laws, digitalized their ports, and standardized logistic zones. So we only see Vietnam rice is being imported plenty, but institutions like CARISCA were behind them, helping them create systems that make them actually work. The discipline comes when we follow the systems. So yes, Ghana has every right to aim for export dominance, but we need to understand what export readiness requires. Seriousness at home first, before visibility of our brand abroad. And again, this is where CARISCA comes in. See, I am saying CARISCA a lot because as I was writing this, I wrote this speech a little bit as a freestyle, as in I was freestyling in my mind, and it kept coming back to CARISCA. Since partnering with them, I have used your website a lot. Because the Center for Applied Research and Innovation in Supply Chain Africa is not just producing policy papers. I am evidence of that. It is mapping actual system gaps. It is training people. I was there recently for their job fair. It is strengthening university and industry linkages and using data to show where blockages exist. And then they're doing something fantastic, recommending how to fix them. They're practically now an employee that I'm not paying, because they are giving a lot of info to us and we are utilizing it. So please send me your invoice. Listen, I really wish we stop funding shiny export expos and start funding ecosystems and builders like CARISCA, because they are doing more than just asking what can we sell. They're asking the right questions, like what systems can we make trustworthy via traceability, via data accessibility, and so much more. Because in the end, export is actually a test that the world is watching of your planning, of your policy, and back to the subject matter of your partnerships. So let's pass this test. I'm giving a speech, but not with speeches, but with systems that speak for themselves. An important point is also that collaboration without standards is just a sentiment. Trust doesn't scale without structure, and collaborations don't hold unless there's something to hold on to. In the real world, especially in fragmented economies like the ones we have in Africa, standards are not only technical requirements, they are the invisible glue of collaboration. They make it possible for someone in Tamale to synchronize with someone in Takoradi, or for someone in Ghana to transact seamlessly with someone in the United States, Tunisia, Singapore. And we cannot build joint infrastructure or shared logistics corridors if we don't agree on things like road limits, traceability formats, and product classifications. We say we want to export together, but here's a question. Does a cassava processor in Cape Coast use the same certification benchmarks as the trader in Abidjan? Does our SME logistics provider in Kumasi follow the same cold chain protocols as the exporter in Lagos? Because we need to answer this question before we can tell ourselves from needing to build it on their own. It means we need common supplier registries. Let a qualified supplier in Ghana also be eligible in Togo Benin, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, without restarting the vetting process all over again. It means we need mutual recognition agreements, especially in healthcare and agribusiness that I work in, and also the tech services, so that trust earned in one country translates into operational ease in another. Recently, Kenya did a collaboration with Ghana in that regard, and I was so happy for that. And yes, standards can be uniquely African, because I am not proposing importing ISO benchmarks wholesale. I am very pro-Africa, and I am recommending building hybrid systems that reflect the realities on the ground. Informal commerce, the dominance of cash, blended logistics, until we are able to curb and correct and perfect these systems, we cannot close our eyes and imagine they do not exist. For instance, in rural logistics, a trust-based delivery model may outperform a GPS tracking. And a typical example is, I always get my tracks from the General Agricultural Workers Union of Ghana and the Union of Truck Workers, because of the trust in that union, I sleep. I'm not worried about my goods being diverted. You can have the best GPS tracking. Okoyiguna Okotogwa. Working in Ghana is not easy. In the end, the question is really simple. Can we trust what we cannot align? And then it begs the follow-up statement of, we must align and collaborate so we can trust. Collaboration without standards is like building a bridge with mismatched boats. It might hold for a while, but eventually the complexity of the systems and the collaboration in itself will collapse the entire bridge. So let's stop expecting just trust to do the work, but let's build the systems that carry the load. And that is why, again, I respect CARISCA for the work that they do. I like it when I get to a part of my speech and I get a little bit of clap, then it gives me more vim to speak more. Prof said I shouldn't be too serious, so blame him. Okay, so another point I want to touch on is we must localize our procurement and not just our production. So procurement is important to me when it comes to collaborations. When we speak of fueling Africa's growth through collaboration and shared resources, we must confront a quiet contradiction that exists, because we preach localization, yet most often we practice external preference when it comes to procurement. Walk into many public sector institutions right now and large corporation offices or donor-funded programs in Ghana, or maybe even Kenya and Nigeria, and you find a paradox where local businesses are celebrated in speeches and PowerPoints and on their websites and everything, but sidelined when it comes to procurement. The gap is structural and it's costing us. Consider this, that a young man runs, let's say, a packaging firm in Kumasi, and their product meets every performance requirement. They employ people, they pay their taxes, they source inputs locally. But when the contract is issued for a new agricultural export pilot or for a pilot that requires their products, sometimes it's handed to an imported supplier, maybe as far away like in Europe or China or somewhere else, because they've done it before. They are more experienced, or they have some pre-existing global partner status. No one questions whether the marginal efficiency gain justifies the entire loss of local economic recirculation, and it costs our ecosystem. And it's not just about being fair as well. It's also about feedback loops. The more our local entities do, the more they can perfect. The more they perfect, the more the country becomes better as a whole. We don't want our supply chain to lose the opportunity to mature through trial, feedback, and scale. We cannot build competitive ecosystems if we don't feed them business. And that business sometimes is just under our nose, procurement deals. There is a need for something to be done. There are people doing what you need, albeit maybe not as perfect as the multi-billion-dollar organization across the pond. But if they are able to do it and perfect it, then you get a company built locally, that can compete and serve you just like the people across the pond. So procurement is more than a financial act. For me, it's a tool for nation building, especially for SMEs and small businesses. The global economy has known this for decades. Again, I didn't say it though, Prof said it. In America now, it's America first, right? US aid has been wiped out. In South Korea, state contracts were part of the industrial strategy that birthed Hyundai and Samsung. In China, everybody knows this. You have to partner with a local partner in China to gain access. How are we helping Kantanka? I don't know him. I'm not pushing his brand. I'm just saying, are we doing the same here? Why do we hesitate to do the same? I don't have all the answers, and I'm not suggesting insular protectionism. No, that's not it. But if collaboration and shared resources are the strategy, then public and private procurement must be seen as a ready and available fuel. This is funding that we already have. Because procurement is what funds talent. It trains teams. It gives local businesses the confidence to invest in innovation like automation and to hire more and even expand regionally. And without low-hanging fruits like this, we are just inviting businesses to the party and not letting them touch the actual buffet. So let's localize procurement. There's a misguided belief that local preference leads to inefficiency or even corruption. But best practice systems already exist. I'll give a few examples. Weighted scoring gives additional points for local employment or domestic inputs. There are split contracts that allow for local and international firms to work in tandem. Some sort of mentorship by design. And there are also after-action audits that compare supplier performance against initial bid claims. These are all things that can push Africa forward. And the point is not to blindly reward nationality, but to reward ecosystem value creation. Who is contributing to building Ghana's infrastructure and not just extracting margin? We have to answer that question. And for me, again, CARISCA is one of those organizations. Because CARISCA is an evidence-based, high-integrity, and highly capable organizations. But why have they had to look beyond Ghana for funding that exists within Ghana right now and here? Every time I see a brand new car, especially if it's a Bentley or one of those cars that cost probably a house or 2-3 houses in East Legon, and I'm like, okay, are we still in an economic? The money is here. Because the informal rule book in African ecosystems is not who can deliver. We all know the answer. It is who do you know? We must invert that. Today you know CARISCA. Anybody watching this after this event, you know CARISCA now. Collaboration must be based on competence and not just who do you know. A big part of supply chain comes from ghost links that grow the engines behind our supply chain. And let me say something that might sound obvious, but in my dealings, I don't feel that sentiment coming from a lot of our stakeholders. Value chains do not begin in the boardroom. They begin in bare feet on unpaved roads with voices that don't have email signatures or sometimes even bank accounts. And yet, those are often the voices we finance last, and most often not at all. Too many of our national conversations about supply chains skip some of our most essential links, like women-led cooperatives sorting the produce in remote corners of the country, like informal aggregators who move goods from field to the market using the tricycles, aboboya, like small-scale transporters with no tracking devices and no bank statements, but somehow manage the last mile delivery every single day. These players are the glue in our supply chain. They are the bloodstream of our local economies. And yet, many of them remain invisible to our formal systems, unbanked, unregistered, unscored or underscored, which means they are unrecognized and, or most importantly, underfunded. But here's the paradox. We say we want to scale agriculture. We want value addition and inclusive development. But how do we scale something we refuse to see? Because whether we see it or not, they are there. How do we include people that are not on our ledgers? And I always tell my team, I used to be very arrogant when I came back from London. I could school about, you think you know the theory. To know, talk big words. Until you go to Tumu and Golu. Until you go to Ouagadougou, Bobo de la So. And these things just stared at me. And I didn't see it in any textbook. So please allow me to vent a little bit here. Because these are things that I face that I feel like I should have been told all of this. Because the problem sometimes isn't about scaling, it's about eyesight. Not physical eyesight, more of the economic vision and the willingness to work and look beyond, or to work towards looking beyond the balance sheets and into the actual human networks. And to recognize that informal is not the absence of structure. No, structures remain, structures are there. It is the presence of an undocumented system. Now that, to me, is not abstract at all. It's not abstract. Like I said, I deal with it every day. So, two of our companies, Walmart's Microcredit and Walmart's Inclusive Insurance, we've had to answer this challenge head on. We have been licensed by the National Insurance Commission to provide inclusive insurance. I think at the TSP level, we are only for IO, some other two companies, and Walmart's Inclusive Insurance. My question was simple. How do I underwrite a farmer with no fixed address? How do you offer credit to a cassava trader who stores her inventory in her cousin's backyard? The solution for us was complex in execution, but it sounded simple until we tried it. Make visibility the product, make them seen. By bundling microcredits with microinsurance, we make them visible because the moment you insure someone, they enter a ledger. Not just for us, but to the wider financial ecosystem. They show up in claims data. They become the subject of follow-up calls, training sessions, beneficiary assessments, and they are entered into a digital infrastructure as persons of values, not just recipients of aid. So in that sense,
Sorry, very thank you.
The instance we took a team of, I think Dr. Abigail took about almost 80 people into the Savannah regions, and we onboarded 20,000 people. They became visible, and we offered them more than just a safety net, a visibility mechanism. Think of it as a street light. Before insurance, they were operating in the dark. As far as an analyst in Accra sitting somewhere, they don't exist. They've never ever heard of them. The moment you give them insurance coverage, they are now visible in someone's finance ledger. We have to prove this concept though. We can't just, again, like I always tell my team, that so they can learn from it. That when I say arrogant, I meant in my ideas. I go school now, so you think you know. You write the thing and you think it's easily executable. I applied it here as well. How can we execute this? We did it by pricing a micro insurance bundle as just 40 Ghana cedis. A whole year, 40 Ghana cedis. I had a huge back and forth with underwriters and the NIC about this. Because to me, the farmer or those in low-income areas need to pay something less than one note not to feel it. So most insurance coverages are more expensive than ours, but we didn't plan this for profit. We planned it for impact. And this 40 Ghana cedis, it covers 1,500 in hospitalization benefits, which is 300 5 times in a year. So if the person is not feeling well, goes to the hospital, hospitalized for more than 3 days or 3 days or more, we pay out 300 Ghana cedis 5 times in a year. And then we add a life cover that helps during arguably one of the most important social events in Ghana, which is funerals. 3,000 Ghana cedis. Me, I say 3,000 when I'm talking to them. 30 million. Yebema 30 million. See, if you tell someone who's felt unseen this world that, hey, Alaji, sorry for your loss, but here is 30 million. See, now, now that works wonders. And to an urban analyst, 40 cedis might sound like some charity we are doing to them. No, that's not charity. It's a deliberate act. It's a strategy, not just to give them dignity, but as an entry point, as a data entry point, a chance to design a better credit, to deliver better training, and to track repayment risk in real time. It is about redefining eligibility. What if the most financeable people aren't the ones with the highest income? These are questions that we ask ourselves at MIG. But they are the ones with the deepest community ties, the same communities that we, the former guys, go and work in. What if they are the ones? What if we measured financial worthiness not just by collateral, but by consistency? I mean, did she show up to the market every day, rain or shine? Does she make payments on time? What if a cooperative credit score was informed by social reliability metrics, tracked over time, and we actually use this? And what if this innovation in finance wasn't just new platforms and APIs, but new philosophies that other people can use in their inclusion strategies? That is what Wellmax stands for. Because visibility should never be a luxury, and I have to thank the National Insurance Commission for putting up with my stubbornness. And also Metropolitan Life Insurance Ghana Limited, Betty and Felicia, who have been very helpful in crafting this coverage. If we are serious and truly serious about making Ghana a supply chain powerhouse, then we need to start by protecting and developing the top of the supply chain, of course. But let's not forget the heart of it as well. Because these invisible individuals, Ghana is not just Accra. I took a plane to Tamale. I think we went to Boku with the union. And I was like, oh, let's just go to Wa. And I think it was 6 o'clock. I thought Wa was like 30-minute drive away. On the map, it looks very... Yep. They said, boss, it has to be tomorrow. In that one, we have to leave at a certain time and leave at a certain time. So Ghana is not just Accra. The most of Ghana are people that feel unseen and not without reason. They are the invisible links, those that I call the ghost players in the background. But they are not the weakest links. No. They are simply the ones we have failed to see clearly. Well, until now. So let me ask you a question that most bank boardrooms don't ask. What if we are measuring the wrong things all along? Because in Ghana and across much of Africa, financial inclusion pride themselves on their profitability and their risk assessment. And also on asset growth. All valid and very necessary to grow your organization. But some of these metrics tell us, or they fail to tell us, what is happening in the real economy underneath. So let's reframe. What if success was defined not by the bank loan book size, but by business progression? What if your RM was required to tell their boss how well you are doing, and if you're not doing well, why and how they can help? What if our biggest banks were judged not by interest earned, but by the livelihoods that they have proven to have transformed? Banks publish their annual reports all the time. I am still waiting to see the metric of how many MSMEs they changed to SMEs, and SMEs they changed to, thank you, and SMEs they changed to small businesses and whatnot. It's still a very important part that I'm waiting to see. I would need to round up. Collaboration, we need to redefine what we mean by some of these words that we use. And the emotional economics of collaboration is also very important, as I've come to learn. Because we've spent time discussing infrastructure, funding, logistics, but let's talk about something less quantifiable and powerful, the emotional economics of collaboration. And I had fun writing this, actually. Because the hard truth is, we don't admit enough in boardrooms that most collaborations don't break down because of a lack of capital. I've seen it many times. It breaks down because of ego and fear and distrust. And unlike financial costs, emotional costs are often buried, but they compound. In Africa, perhaps anywhere in the world, relationships often carry more weight than contracts. We are confident in notes and handshakes over here in Africa. Let me speak to someone I trust. That's not a flaw. It is a legacy of navigating systems that always did not work for us in Africa. But it also means that without that psychological safety, collaboration becomes risky. People hold back. Organizations compete where they should rather complement. And the bigger vision gives way to smaller suspicions. If partners don't feel heard, valued, or protected, even the best intended alliances will unravel. So who gets the credit for all of this? For partnerships in Africa, it's a very big question that we always ask. It's followed closely by who also gets blamed for all of this. These things may seem small and petty, but they are not. They are real, and they reflect a deeper need for dignity in contribution. Collaboration, meaningful collaboration, will require us to manage not just our resources, but our reputation, and not just output, but the ownership of our narrative. I'll bring my speech to an end here. You have been a gracious audience. My name is Dr. Maxwell. I'm from Maxwell Investments Group. Thank you very much.
Please, let's do better. Let's do better. Actually, he was a keynote speaker for the recent skill development workshop, and I expected nothing but a par excellence delivery. Dr. Maxwell Ampon, and he delivered a keynote on fueling Africa's growth through collaboration and partnership via shared resources. And a key highlight was that Africa needs to develop deeper and lasting relationships, and these are usually developed through constraint and not just comfort.
And my question is, how can academia, institutions, government, and other systems or institutions work together to ensure that these invisible links become visible so that we can deal with them very well?
It's a fair question, because businesses must remain afloat. A business that is registered for profit isn't a charity. In my submission, I think I quite stated how I have secretly been from Professor Boso's institution, that's CARISCA. That's one way that we can improve it. They have done a lot of research, and initially I hesitated for months because I thought it was, research that was either proprietary or it wasn't accessible. It's accessible, and they are ready for partnerships. They are open for growth. They listen. They are an institution that actually listens. That's one way we can do it. The other way too is what the West calls resilience is instability, uncertainty. In Ghana, we call it Tuesday. Electricity is not consistent. Again, it was a cultural shock for me. Resilient. Everybody here is resilient by that standard. So it then shows you that you just need to have a change in perspective. And when we first understand that these are a resilient people, that the onus is on us as co-stakeholders in the national cake. We have to contribute to efforts to bringing them into the loop. Then we don't leave the onus just to, again, academic organizations and financial institutions. Then it's on you, me, you, everybody else to contribute to. And again, I always tell my team, we can't solve the problem in our generation. To contribute to the substrate upon which other generations will contribute and build and build and build and build. And hopefully one day it will not be resilient. It will be good. Because again, what they call resilient, someone is operating with erratic electricity, poor roads, the list goes on, and they are doing it with a smile. By American standards, that is A+, that is ready for investment. By Ghanaian standards, that is a large muntala. That's not fair. And we need to just recognize that and translate that in a way that the relevant institutions can digest. Again, why I love CARISCA so much, because I feel the effects of their work. I have answered it quite well. Thank you.
Dr. Ampon, I certainly appreciate very much your presentation. My name is Albert Ajikumisumai. I'm currently a PhD student with Iowa State University. I'm working on last mile logistics. Logistic value chain. The last mile presents opportunity for a lot of cost if it's not properly managed. And I note in your presentation within the private sector, the invisible players in the supply chain, the allergies, play a critical role for you in getting the work done. And but apart from these allergies, within the last mile logistic distribution, from where you get the product to the hands of the customers, what would you say are some of the, apart from the allergies, other models or strategies that could be helpful in ensuring that cost is minimized? I mean, customer satisfaction is met timely and speed is ensured within the African, because I know you are a private sector person, so I don't want to go into the public sector, but within the private sector, where does it really fall within those spaces? Yeah, I'll be happy to incorporate your ideas in my research.
He was Apo. But I'll give you the actual Apo because I looked into this about a decade ago when I also saw the same problem. We cannot have an Amazon in Ghana without the infrastructure of Amazon and the systems that make it work. It's just, I've stopped complaining now. Now I just do. That's why I call it a regular Tuesday, because if we say we are going to complain, it won't work. How does Amazon work? They have these huge national, or let's say regional, state warehouses that are then again broken down into sub-regional warehouse that again broken down, and the logistics is all streamlined because at first they use UPS and then they realized that the cost of paying UPS can start a whole new company, so they did this. Oh, I thought I was doing the same again. I think you know. I started Maxwell Logistics. Why do you think I give her all my deals? Because my model can't work now. We want last mile delivery to be excellent. Amazon Prime, fantastic. The infrastructure does not exist, but you can propose as an infrastructure that if published in academic publications, maybe the next billionaire can pick it up and make it work. But use the Amazon model, because we cannot have an Amazon level effect or service without an Amazon, without the systems that support that huge company. I hope you see where I'm going. So last mile is not the problem. It is the visible part of the problem, because that's where you interact with. It's the entire infrastructure. So if I want to create a very good logistics entity, I need a national warehouse, I need a regional warehouse, I need a district warehouse, constituent. Look at the numbers. Now ask for collateral. 120% of the for sale value. Where am I going to get that? Where are you going to get that? These are systemic questions you can bring up that will make your thesis better. And let's talk later after this. I think we can brainstorm this, but this was my submission for his query. I hope that's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.